Yeah, guys, sometimes I wonder, like, when deep state players were concocting this scheme, right? This elaborate scheme against Trump, and they were sitting in the room, right? A lot of them, right? And maybe one of them, the kind of the lower mid-level ones, or maybe even some of the surrogates, some of the assistants, dared to pipe up and say, let's say maybe directly to Obama, well, Mr. President, what if he wins again? What if he comes back into power again, some way, somehow, by some, I don't know, anomalous whatever miracle, let's say, and then he just decides to go after us for all of this, right? Because the evidence will be there, right? You can't cover all the tracks. And Obama probably said, first of all, most likely he won't. Second of all, this is so extensive, it's so big, he can't, even if he wanted to go after all of us, he can't possibly do it. Can't possibly do it. Half the people are going to plead the fifth, the other half are going to flee the country. It's impossible. Folks, I mean, this is basically how they operate, right? It's kind of the same thing as like the Palestinians, make the lie so grandiose and so big and do it for such a long time that people are just going to assume that it's a fact after a while, right? They're just going to assume that anybody who comes to debunk it is lying, or, I don't know, denying history or denying whatever, right? Folks, in this case, you make it so ginormous, right, that if somebody comes and shows you, okay, here's what this guy did, here's what 275 FBI guys did, plainclothes guys did here, right? Here's what Brennan did over here, with whatever, Saudi Arabia, and these 50 intelligence guys. Well, he was in Saudi Arabia before that. Maybe he converted to Islam. 50 intelligence guys did this, right? They pretend, they pretended, they said that this was a Russian, whatever, document about Hunter Biden. Here's what these guys did. Here's what those guys. Folks, I mean, it can't, they're under the impression that Trump is just going to be plugging holes in the Titanic, right? And that it's going to be impossible. It's going to be completely impossible. But folks, I mean, what if, right? He was in fact in some level of control the entire time. What if he just spent this entire time, especially this so-called exile, or as he calls it himself, the pause, to literally amass every single solitary piece of evidence and just categorize it and catalog it and anthologize it and just create an order, a seder, in which he's gonna just release and address all of it, right? There has to be a seder, there has to be an order to all of it, guys. That's why everybody's like, oh, I don't understand why he's not going after this, I don't understand why he's not doing prosecuting that, and why is there no arrest for this thing, for the Schmeckzine, why is there no. Folks, everything has to be done, not only even in a very legal and kind of openly legitimate way. It has to be done in a particular order. It has to be time released. It has to be released in a way that people can digest it with their consciousness, right? Whatever they're watching, whatever they're consuming, however they're consuming it, right? I'm pretty sure somebody sat down, right, and helped President Trump with, by way of figuring out, using AI, let's say, right, to figure out what people watch, when they watch it, where they consume it, how they consume it, what's the best way to deliver it to them, what's the, what's going to grab their attention, when it's going to grab their attention, what's not, right? Or what part of it will, what part of it won't, right? There's all these folks, there's all these things, because at the end of the day, what this is Trump is trying to do in maybe a few months, or maybe he'll do it maybe in the next, over the course of a year or two, right? To unravel the psyop that was basically perpetrated at least over the last 10 years, if not last 20, right? He's unraveling this pretzel, and he's trying to present it, so to speak, on a silver platter, digestible to all of us, right? Meaning, guys like me, I already know. It's like somebody, my father came to me, oh, did you know that there was 275 plainclothes guys over there? I said, yeah, I knew that. I looked at videos. Folks, all you got to do is look at some of the footage. They escorted these guys, or they coaxed them, or they goaded them into going into the Capitol. And then once they got in the Capitol, it was like a a museum tour. Some of these policemen giving museum tours, right? Folks, we understand what went on. I don't know the exact amount of guys that were there. I didn't know there was 275. I thought there maybe was like 50. I didn't know it was that big, right? Now it explains why Pelosi didn't call for National Guard, because if National Guard came, they would have found those guys. They would have identified those guys, right? Would have had a problem on their hands immediately, right? It would have been uncovered as the Fetsurrection immediately. It would have been, seen as the next Reichstag fire, which it was, right? So, folks, he's basically trying to unravel, and he's trying to show people who otherwise have not been paying attention, people who are what I like to call, the people online at the security line at the airport, right? Who are these people? These are the people that are, they're standing on the security line at the airport, watching. There's a screen. What is a screen? It has CNN. So it's the walk, it's not even drive-by media, it's the walk-by media, right? So people are consuming what's called walk-by media at the airport and usually it's CNN, even if it's Fox News, right, guys? If the stuff is not, if they're not researching it themselves, if they're not going and seeking it out themselves, then whatever they're consuming, that's what they're consuming. That's what's on, so to speak, front page news, right? Or as they call, this guy I was arguing with, reputable sources, reputable. Okay, so my friends, yes, it is that extensive. It was that extensive. They thought he wasn't going to do it. They thought he wasn't going to get him back into power. They thought that and even if he did, he wouldn't be able to, go after this guy and that guy for every single actual crime, which they were, and false accusation and false this and false that. They thought they were in the clear. Right, guys? Satanists, unfortunately, are stupid. They are clever, right? They think they're clever. They think they're smart. They're clever for a little bit of time. But, folks, they are ultimately stupid. They're ultimately stupid. And now they're hoping, what are they hoping for? They're hoping that they can go on television and they can present, because they're very, very good at what? Talking and acting and PR and going on television, who's in cahoots with them and saying, like Brennan went the other day, he said, well, there's nothing legally that, I'm just paraphrasing, there's nothing legally that implicates me, right? And he's good at explaining how that is, and, basically lulling people to sleep with all kinds of legal jargon and basically explaining, you see, I'm the good guy, and there's nothing, I'm in the clear, and there's nothing really, blah, 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 this and that. Folks, at the end of the day, the evidence will speak for itself, right? Nothing here is concocted, nothing here is planted, right? Unlike with these guys. They can scream dictator all they want, and they're going to go on the media and scream dictator, and all the late night hosts are going to scream dictator, and all the actors, all the Hollywood guys are going to scream dictator, which they already are. Angelina Jolie says, I don't recognize my country. I don't know what country she's talking about. I guess she's talking about, what, Africa? I don't know. Whatever, right? Unfortunately, her father, was a big tzaddik, was not able to knock any sense into her. It's unfortunate. What's his name? I forget his name. He's a big pro-Israel guy. Big pro-Israel guy. Gigantic pro-Israel guy. So yeah, guys. They thought that it's too big, and they thought it was going to be too big to prosecute, too extensive for people to believe that this is something that, a group of people would do, right? Folks, again, I mentioned this before. I was born in the former Soviet Union. In the Soviet Union, how did the Soviet Union come about? There was a bunch of people that got together and they made a very, very elaborate conspiracy to overthrow the government. Now, I'm not a fan of the Tsarist government, right? I'm just saying that people, in the words of Dr. Zelenko, the late great Dr. Zelenko, people conspire. Okay? People conspire. Folks, you know, who was it that, I think it was yesterday, yeah, that idiot, Jim Carrey. I mean, it's a shame what happened to his brain, right? He said, yeah, it's, Trump is destroying every institution. First of all, good. Second of all, he's implying that Trump, you know, he said everything was like fine and everybody got along before Trump came in, right? And it's amazing to me because what the schmuck doesn't realize, or maybe he does, is that prior to Trump's arrival, things were humming along in a way that these people who were in charge for the last, pretty much since George W. Bush's father, right? Pretty much since 89, technically speaking, right? 89, 90, pretty much since the collapse of the Soviet Union. So basically like what, 26 years. They were making it look like everything was humming along just fine as they got the country into more and more debt and more wars, and then debt and then wars and then debt and then wars, immorality, you know, QE infinity, quantitative easing ad infinitum, you know, collapse and then war and then collapse and then war and then fabricated war and fake war, whatever, right? So a guy like Trump comes in and he says, listen, we're not going to continue in this way. We're not going to continue in this way. So they have to fight him. They have to present themselves as the good guys. You see, the country was like this before this guy came in. We made it like this. We you know, we were the ones steering the ship and we were doing it pretty well. Yeah, in a way that if most people found out about, you know, what this really was, they wouldn't like it. But we convinced the people that this is okay to keep going like this, right? Again, from the year, sorry, not 20, 26 years. From the year 1990, or from the year 1989 until 2016, we were doing just fine. Nobody complained. Yeah, problems here and there, but overall, people were okay, right? Everything was okay. People got along, so to speak, right? Let's forget about the whole what Obama did to his political opponents. Let's forget about the whole Muslim Brotherhood thing. Let's forget about the whole, you know, the border thing, all these kind of things. You know, Fast and Furious. Folks, I'm not even going to bring up half the stuff during Obama's 8 years in office, right? And even before that, during Clinton, and Bush, George W. Bush as well, by the way. Let's forget about all that. Folks, so they have to make themselves look like the good guys. They have to make it look like, yes, we did all these amazing things for however many years. We're the good guys. We're the guys who love America, right? And Trump came in and he's ruining all of that. So everything we did, yeah, even if we lied, even if we cheated, it's justified. Folks, in their minds, everything's justified. Everything is justified. They're going to tell you. They're going to stand up there and tell you. I guarantee you one of the things is going to be when they testify, right? However they testify, whether it's in Congress or in court, you know, once the whole plead the fifth thing, you know, once you get past all that, right? Once you actually speak, they're going to say, President Trump did this, so we had to do this. He was like this, so we had to say that. We had to go over here and do that, because if we didn't do that, you know, we were saving the republic. They're gonna justify. I guarantee you, at some point, one of them is gonna justify. We were doing this because he's gonna be a dictator. He's gonna be like that, and Folks, notice in the very beginning, before he even took office, they started saying, he's a dictator. He's a dictator. He didn't even do anything yet. He didn't even go anywhere yet. He didn't even step foot in the White House. This is, folks, we're talking about you know, I don't know, December 2016. He's a dictator, 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 over, hammering over your head. Folks, Bolsheviks are always the good guys in their story. Always, always. So, and they always create such an elaborate scheme, and they never think that even if their their enemy or their opponent gets back in power, they never think that the opponent will be able to unravel everything. It's impossible, folks. Baruch Hashem, in this day and age, it's very, very possible. We have the technology, we have the know-how. It's very, very possible. You can do it in hours if you have the right people with you. Sitting in front of a computer and basically, cobbling everything together. It's not that difficult, relatively speaking, right? So, B'ezrat Hashem, guys. Now we're gonna see what I like to call kabuki theater. We're gonna see again. I said it in the last video. The dying swans of the burned down theater. The dance of the dying swans. You're gonna see all these people, Comey, Brennan, all these guys. Oh, I can't believe he's doing this to his political opponents. It's a day, Mussolini. Who does this? Blah, 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 blah. Folks, you're gonna see it. You're gonna see all kinds of stuff in the media, and because ultimately, guys, again, they have to keep it up. They have to keep up the con, as they call him, a con man, right? I think yesterday even, this Jim Carrey doofus. Yeah, he's a car salesman, he's a con man. And Bill Maher's like, hey, he's a con man, he's a car. Yeah. Listen, folks, heat up some popcorn, pop some popcorn, get some burekas, I don't know, whatever you like. Not everybody likes popcorn. And enjoy the show. And by the way, head on a swivel. Be careful. Be careful out there. Alright, guys. Shavua Tov, and talk to you soon.